My name's Pastor Dave, and we have changed the name of Vacation Bible Stories to Weekly Bible Stories since we are no longer in summer vacation. And so Weekly Bible Stories, I'm going to begin today with the story of Elijah being fed by the ravens. And I'll read the story and give you kind of the context afterwards. And so I'll begin with this. This is taken from 1 Kings chapter 17. Many years passed, and the rulers of the northern kingdom were wicked, and Ahab and his cruel wife Jezebel of Sidon. Ahab built a temple for Baal and which was worshipped by Jezebel, and the queen had many other prophets killed. But there was one true prophet. He was named Elijah, and he warned the king, for more than 2 years there will be neither rain nor even dew on this land, and you will learn that my God is the one true God. And it happened as he said. God sent Elijah east of the Jordan River to hide. And there, ravens brought him bread and meat, and he drank from the brook. When the brook dried up, God told Elijah to go to Sidon, where there would be a widow to help him. When Elijah reached the city gates, he met a woman gathering firewood, and he asked her for a drink of water. The kind widow went to fetch him a jar of water, and even though the water was scarce, she was going. Elijah asked her for some bread. I'm afraid I have no bread, she replied. I only have a handful of flour in a jar and a little olive oil in a jug. I am gathering a few sticks to take it home and make one last meal for myself and my son, that I might eat it and die. Now Elijah told her not to worry, but to go home and make a small loaf of bread for him first, and then one for herself and her son. For God had promised that the flour and the oil would not run out until the day that the rain fell on the land. And the kind widow did as Elijah had asked, and found out that when she had made one loaf, she had enough flour and oil to make another, and another, and another. And so it went on day after day. And there was always enough food for Elijah and the widow and her young son. That would be the story. Again, the context is that Elijah had just made that pronouncement to Ahab that there'd be a drought, and that God sent him to the brook because water hadn't run out there, and then God sent ravens to feed him. And then when the brook went dry because there was a drought, he sent him to Sidon, which was Jezebel's hometown, in order to find provision there. And there he found the widow, and God provided for both of them when they were in Sidon. So.
Pastor Dave, what lesson should we learn from this Bible story?
Well, and actually both of these stories is that God provides for his people. I mean, one is that God sent ravens, who we don't normally think of bringing people food, maybe taking food from them. But God sent ravens to feed Elijah, took him to that brook that hadn't run dry yet. And so the story of the ravens is that ravens, even though they were unclean animals, were bringing Elijah food. And then likewise, I guess the story of Sidon. Again, Sidon was where Jezebel was from. It was part of the country of Tyre, and the city-state of Tyre. And again, it would be a place that was spiritually unclean because they worshiped false gods, but God had raised up this widow to help Elijah. God had raised her up. He didn't... I'm not sure that the widow knew that God had raised her up, but she trusted in God. I guess that would be Elijah's request was kind of a huge request. This was a person starving, and he says, "Well, get some food for me first." But for whatever reason, she believes him, which I think sometimes God asks us to step out in faith, and we believe him. And there's provision, there's miracles that come from that. The jar that never runs dry, the flour jar that never runs dry, the oil jar that never runs dry, is, again, both of those are stories about God's provision in places where there's want, where there's, so it looks kind of like, oh boy, this is a horrible situation. There's a drought, and there's no food, and there's no water, and so it looks like all hope is lost, but then God finds a way for his people who are faithful to him.
Thanks, Pastor.